Mr. John Mearsheirmer was on the Glen, Diesen show on YouTube where he critiqued U.S. foreign policy pertaining to the Iran war. We are going to look at some of what he has to say to provide a balanced critique of his perspective. One must look at both the internal logic of his argument and potential counter-arguments from different schools of geopolitical thought. Let's hear some of Mr. John Mearsheirmer critique of the U.S. foreign policy when it comes to the war in Iran.
John Mearsheirmer to discuss the war against Iran, which is definitely not going as planned. So thank you very much for coming back on.
My pleasure, Glenn.
Okay.
So, well, as I said, the war definitely not going as Trump had hoped, but it seems to be going as many would have predicted. Indeed, Trump himself had was met with a lot of warnings before he went down this road. And
what they're talking about here is that the war is taking too long. The war should have been wrapped up already, and Iran should have surrendered already. That is at least Glen Diesen's point of view. Maybe Mr. John Mearsheirmer will share the same opinion later.
And now, of course, it's unclear what direction he should take. We also see reports from the from the American media that even Israel is now growing concerned. They don't think that Iran is going to collapse. They don't think it's going to surrender. So what exactly, if time is on Iran's side, why go down this road? And the Wall Street Journal said something similar, that Trump's advisor would like to find a quick exit from this war.
If you look back at every war in history, World War I, World War II, the one who started the war always think that the war is going to be over shortly. No one in their right mind go into a war and think that it's going to be forever, and Trump is no exception. The only exception to that rule is probably was Hitler, and he was crazy. Goes into a war and think it's going to be forever. World War I and World War II, the expectation was for the war to be over in a short time. And even in the Crusade or the Spanish Inquisition, they went into the war thinking that it is going to be over in a short time. And usually that is not the case. But in this war with the U.S. and Iran, as the United States president called it, it's a military operation. The U.S. hands are tied behind their back in this war because they only can operate within that 60 days. And after that, there is no funding. The U.S. got to get ahead out of there. Unless the U.S. Congress vote to fund the war, and as of March 19, 2026, Congress has not authorized the ongoing war in Iran between the United States, Iran, and Israel, or has it approved a specific supplemental funding request to the conflict. So, therefore, the United States hands are tied behind their back in this war because they're strapped of funding. So the Israelites would have to battle this one alone when the U.S. has to pull out of this war. And war took time, even back in the biblical time, Yahweh time, when Israel was in war and they had help from God, making those wars supernatural, and the war that they engaged in took some time. So the military operation with Iran now. It's going to take some time, but the one I don't think that Israel is thinking about the time because they're the one who is going to be affected when the U.S. has to go back home if Congress don't fund the war.
Well, it's quite clear that the war is not going well for the United States. Trump, I think, would like to put an end to it.
As if President Trump didn't know that he's working within a short window of time because it's a military operation, because it's not funded by Congress, so his time is limited to get Iran not to acquire nuclear weapons.
And the problem that he faces is he can't find an off-ramp. I think nobody can tell a plausible story about how this war ends. If we had decisively defeated Iran the way we decisively defeated both Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan in World War II, then you can say the war is over with, we are the winner, and we're going to impose terms on the loser.
Well, there is a lot of things to unpack there. Let's first start on his off-ramp argument. So if we have an off-ramp, then before we get off, we got to get on. So why did Israel and the US get on the on-ramp? Let's start at the on-ramp. When U.S. Special Envoy Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff met in Geneva, Switzerland on February 26 with their Iranian counterparts, it is said that the Iranian boasted that they reach 60% uranium purity and they could make 10 or 11 nuclear bombs within days. That was the on-ramp for President Trump. However, Iran may be playing the devil's advocate here by saying that they could make nuclear weapons within 10 days or a few days. That could be all a lie, just for the US to invade their country, and they want to pull an Iraqi moment in the Iraqi war when the United States could not find any weapon of mass destruction. The entire world condemned the United States. Even their own citizens were against President Bush at that time. So if Iran knew what happened then, that if the United States invade Iran and that there is no nuclear weapon to be found, then the President of the United States would be condemned by the entire world and also the citizen of America. They would have won the psychological war while the entire world would be condemning the United States and sympathize with the Iranians. If this is a ploy out of the Iranian playbook, if they can bunker down while they were just running their mouths that they have nuclear weapon or going to achieve nuclear weapon within days, and if no nukes or enriched uranium were found after the dust is settled, then Iran will survive, as according to Mr. John Mearsheirmer puts it. That would be a success for Iran and the mullahs if they can survive the initial onslaught and exist as a defiant state. However, in the real world, this set a low bar for victory. They ignore the external stability. the Iranian state. While the Iranian state may survive if there is no plausible victory for the United States and Israel, the total destruction of their industrial energy and military infrastructure could lead to internal collapse or a failed state status similar to Libya, which will be a strategic defeat even if the regime technically remains in power. It's quite eerie that he mentioned Germany and Japan. Germany was the Nazis were trying to make an atomic bomb during World War II. Sounds eerie. Likewise, Iran in today's war trying to acquire a nuclear bomb. And why Germany didn't get their nuclear bomb is because of miscalculation by the German scientist who dismissed graphite as a moderator that led them to rely heavily on heavy water, which was heavily sabotaged by the Allied actions. In World War II, the United States and Russia couldn't let the madman known as Hitler acquire an atomic bomb. So the Allied forces bombed those ships that were trying to get transport in the heavy water. Now the United States cannot let Iran acquire nuclear weapon because those leaders are crazy. If they get it, they're gonna use it. Just like how they send drones into hotels in Dubai. If it was nuclear weapon they would use it too. And when it comes to Japan, what is Mr. John Mearsheirmer saying? Is he saying that the United States should go down the same road that they did in Japan? That they should do the same thing with Iran? The United States dropped the atomic bomb on two cities in Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And then the imperialist Japanese surrender. This is what Mr. John Mearsheirmer saying, if Iran is going to dug in and then there is no off-ramp and there is no plausible end to the war. Is this what he is suggesting? I don't know. But that's what happened in history. I don't know if this is his suggestion. Let's hear some more of what he has to say.
But anyway, it appears that Prime Minister Netanyahu bamboozled President Trump, convinced him that we would win a quick and decisive victory. And we have not won that quick and decisive victory.
The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't live under a rock. He knows that the present political climate in the United States, that President Trump won't be able to sustain a long and drawn-out war. So, if he persuaded President Trump to join the war effort against Iran, then he knows by some point he's going to be alone after the United States withdrew themselves from the war, or the Congress reined them in by not funding the war. And Israel is the one who got to live in that neck of the hood. So they are going to be in the forever war with Iran when the United States has to go back home. So how does that make any sense that would be suicidal by Benjamin Netanyahu if he did persuade the United States to join along with Israel in the war, that he knows that the United States is not going to be in there for the duration of Trump presidency.
Both Iran and Russia, whether you like the regimes in those two countries or not, I think the leaders, and here we're talking about Putin in the case of Russia, and of course Ayatollah Khamenei and now his son, all the evidence is that these regimes are rational legal.
And Trump is not, according to their arguments so far.
That they're thinking strategically. I mean, just to segue to Putin for a second, Putin is a first-rate strategic thinker. I don't know how anybody could disagree with that. The idea that he's some sort of fool who's detached from reality makes no sense. You don't have to like what he's doing. You can think that he was wrong to invade Ukraine. I understand that. But he thinks in a very logical way.
Well, President Trump has an opportunity to make President Putin not a strategic thinker, if my memory serves me right. The strategic thinker, President Putin, he's the one who is currently in a forever war. The one that they said President Trump is heading to in Iran. But as we stand right here, in fact, it is President Putin, the strategic thinker. He's the one that is in a forever war with Ukraine, not President Trump. So if President Trump can get out of this war and let it be short and spicy, just playing around with words now, then President Putin, the strategic thinker that Mr. John Mearsheirmer think he is, he's going to be the one that looks like a fool, and President Trump would look like a genius. In fact, it is President Putin who can't find the off-ramp for in that war against Ukraine, and President Trump is the one who is searching for a ramp for President Putin to get the hell out of that war.
I think he has a powerful strategic mind. And I think if you look at the Iranians, you listen to the foreign minister talk, he is an impressive individual. Again, you don't have to like the Iranian regime, and you can view Iran as an adversary. But I think it's very important when you're in a war and you're trying to assess the other side, that you do it in a rational, legal way. And if the other side is smart and clever.
The Iranian foreign minister, with his smooth talking, he's the one who has bamboozled these two guys, as it seems.
That the United States, when it comes to dealing with Russia, when it comes to dealing with China as well, and when it comes to dealing with Iran, you're dealing with leaders in those countries who are smart and who know how to think strategically.
As smart as all those leaders are, they still commit atrocities to their own population. We all remember Tiananmen Square and all those opposition leaders in Russia, what allegedly happened to them. Let's ask former President Biden how we think, what he thinks about President Putin.
Standing together against a murderous dictator, a pure thug who is waging an immoral war against the people of Ukraine. And Putin is paying a big price for his aggression.
And how the Iranians, once you're a dissident, what is your punishment?
So let's cover the New York Post right now. Take a look at it. Ainsley, you have it holding it up. And essentially it's butchers. Iran's despots fight for control by publicly executing teenage protesters, including a 19-year-old wrestler named Salah Mohammadi, who and two others after.
That's how strategic the Iranians are. Here, Mr. John Mearsheirmer is saying that President Trump doesn't know how to get along with leaders from Russia. He never heard about the Russian collusion, the greatest hoax ever in the United States, that says President Trump was friendly with Putin. Where has Mr. John Mearsheirmer has been? Unless even he knows that the Russian collusion was a hoax.
With regard to what the Russians are doing to help the Iranians, as you know, that's hard to tell. I think that it is quite clear that the Russians are providing intelligence for the Iranians, and that intelligence is helping the Iranians wage the war. And it's limiting what the Americans and the Israelis can do to defend against Iranian ballistic missiles.
It seems like the Russians forgot that they were colluding with Trump, and that Trump is bought and paid for by the Russians. And he is a Russian asset. Putin should be helping Trump. Why he is helping Iran? I thought he was colluding with Trump. Here is Mr. John Mearsheirmer on another YouTube program, The Breaking Point, saying why he believes that the Iranian has the ace in the war.
But if you're going to go to war, this is the last war that you want to start. And the reason is that the Iranians hold most of the cards. If you think about where we are today, and you think more importantly about further marching up the escalation ladder, Iran can do enormous damage to the international economy. And there's nothing much we can do to prevent that. So we're in a precarious situation right now.
His view here is that Iran can cause great pain globally by shutting down the Strait of Hormuz. But, however, this is a sword that is sharpened on two sides. Iran's entire economy is totally dependent on that same water that he refers to for its own export, for its only commodity, oil. Furthermore, a total shutdown of the strait will alienate Iran's remaining allies, like China, which is a number one or a primary buyer of its oil. So if they cause pain globally, that means they also self-inflict pain on themselves also. That is all we have for today, folks. What do you think? Do remember to like, share, and subscribe this, and drop a comment in the comment section.